Trout Routes combines stream maps and river data to help you find fishing access faster. Be confident on the water with fishing access points, real-time stream gauges, and public access, now brought to you by Onyx Maps. Whether you're looking for blue lines, gold medal rivers, or something new in your backyard, Trout Routes has the data to get you on the water fast. Destination Angler podcast listeners can try 1 month of Trout Routes Pro for free by clicking on the link in the episode description. Do what I do and put more access in your hands and explore the water you love with Trout Routes today. This week on the Destination Angler.
A colder, less nutrient-dense freestone, for example, you're going to have a fish move maybe 20 feet for a dry fly, right? Which is an awesome experience. On the Missouri, that is a rare occasion, right? You have fish sitting and holding in a spot, and the bigger they are, the tighter they hold generally. And so what I would consider the big leagues of fly fishing is finding that one fish.
And that was Micah Fields on the Mighty Mo. Hey, be sure to give me a share, like, or follow, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler, brought to you by Adams Built Fishing Gear, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear built to last at an affordable price. By High and Dry Fishing, where science and performance meet. By Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed to your level of experience and budget. And by Trout Routes. And now, when you sign up for my newsletter on the Destination Angler podcast website, you get 3 months of Trout Routes free for first-time subscribers. Not bad, right? Check it out. Coming up on the Destination Angler, we travel to the other side of the world, to the rugged and remote Tasmania with fly fishing legend Jack Dennis to chase trout in one of the most unique locations on Earth. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on the Land of Big. That's the massive Upper Columbia River in southeastern British Columbia, with fly fishing icon Kelly Latch, where the eddies are the size of football fields and the rainbows fight like steelhead. And today our destination is the legendary Missouri River near Craig, Montana, one of the most technically challenging rivers in the West. Joining me is guide, author, photographer, Marine Corps vet, and adjunct professor Micah Fields, who unpacks his playbook for dry fly headhunting, the quirks of Holter Dam, and the art of reading a river that fishes like a giant spring creek. Plus, hear about Montana's highly selective Guiding for the Future program and why it matters for the rivers we love, MREs and chickens in Helmand Province, and an encounter with the great John Geirach. Stick around to the end for Micah's favorite shore lunch. You'll be drooling over this one. Hey, get out the chalkboard as we talk serious X's and O's on technical fly fishing with Micah. Oh, hey, everybody. Really excited to have Micah Fields here, and he's going to be telling us about the legendary Missouri River below Holter Dam near Craig, Montana. Welcome to the show, Micah.
Thanks, Steve. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I've actually done another show. I did a show with Whitney Gould 2 years ago on the Missouri, but man, it's a fantastic place, so why not do another show with you? So
for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of fish, a lot of guides, a lot of people to talk to.
Yeah, and a lot of customers, I hear.
For sure. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. So, folks, if you haven't, heard of the Missouri near Craig, Montana, it's a tailwater. It's known for high trout density and size, really good hatches, gin clear water, and great dry fly fishing. But I hear there's some nymph fishing and maybe some streamer fishing as well. And Micah, super interesting guy. So he served 4 years as an infantry rifleman in the United States Marine Corps. Thanks for your service, Micah.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. And you're a combat veteran, Iraq and Afghanistan. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
May dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got a degree in English from the University of Montana and a master's degree in creative writing from the University of Iowa. Serves on the board of the Montana chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. And when he's not guiding, he writes, hunts, explores with his family around their home in Helena, Montana. And you're also an adjunct professor in Helena. How do you have any time to do any exploring with your family? That's a lot.
A lot of hats. Yeah. And then
Is
some
that
of
right?
them, some of them pay the bills. Some of them don't.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm a podcaster, so I know what you mean. And so the way I found Mica is he was featured in Trout Magazine recently on the Pocket Water column called Guiding for the Future, a conversation with Micah Fields. And this is the Guiding for the Future program that Foam puts on. And we're going to hear all about that as well. So Micah also has written a number of essays, and his photography has been in magazines like Field and Stream and many, many others. So anyway, I'm glad to get a chance to talk to you. All right, I got to ask you. So you live in Helena. Why don't you live in Craig, Montana, where you do business?
Few reasons. There's not a grocery store there. And two, you know, my wife's from Helena, and it'd be tough to raise a family in Craig, as beautiful as it is, and
Yeah.
as convenient as it would be to live and guide based out of there. And some folks do it. I like Helena a lot, and it's a good kind of home base, and 40 minutes door to door, or 40 minutes door to boat ramp for me. So it's not bad. That's not a bad commute.
Yeah, not bad. I bet it's a beautiful ride compared to what a lot of us are doing, going from the suburbs into the city, right?
It's pretty nice. It's nice to, as a guide, I think a lot of people would agree. It's like, it's good to drink your coffee and wake up for 40 minutes or so before getting into guide mode. So I
Yeah.
like it. It's a nice little recharge every day.
You get your game face on,
Yeah,
ready
exactly.
for the client, right?
Right.
So the 2010 census, I found Craig, Montana population 43.
Oh man, it might have dropped since then. It might have grown. I always say in the 30s,
Really?
but that sounds about right. Somewhere in there, full-time residents, and I'd say, at least 90% of them connected to the fly fishing industry. But yeah, in the winter it's pretty quiet, so not a lot of year-round folks.
Yeah. What's Helena like? It's a old gold mine town, isn't it? A
That's
lot of
right.
millionaires from the 1880s or something.
Yeah, they're not here anymore.
So-
But yeah, like a lot of the, mining towns in Montana in the West, it was for a brief period in the late 1800s, had more millionaires than any other town in the world. And
really? Helena?
for sure. Yep. They hit a mother lode of gold up the gulch here, just about a mile from my house here. And it, brought a ton of folks, ton of wealth. And this town just was a boom town for briefly. And it's cool. I love Helena because we have sort of the aftermath of that, which is a lot of cool architecture.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really neat mansions from old gold barons of that era that people still live in now. And
Yeah, like your house, right?
yeah, I'm in a small basement in a house built long after that. But it's a really cool town, just history wise, and we're in the kind of the foothills. We're not far from the Rocky Mountain front, so we get a lot of sun, which is nice. In the West, you can be in some mountain towns where you get a lot of inversion and dark winters. So we do get cold winters, but it's usually fairly sunny, and we're just more relevant to our conversation here. We're positioned to some incredible fishing and hunting. So that's
Yeah.
why I love it. But yeah.
What are some of the major rivers in the area that you think anglers ought to check out? Besides Missouri, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, Missouri, just a little over half an hour away, and you're in prime trout water. The Blackfoot, which I guide on, about 10 to 15 days a year and fish personally a lot. Hour away, hour and a half to the boat ramp, give or take.
Oh,
The Madison's not too far either. The Jefferson, the Gallatin, all fabled, Western rivers. And then you could be, in Missoula on the Clark Fork, Yellowstone within 2 hours. So,
yeah.
sorry, not the Yellowstone, the Bitterroot, but you could be on the Yellowstone too in a couple hours.
Yeah. That's a mecca. What about the Dearborn? How's the Dearborn?
I love the Dearborn. It's a sneaky river that you can't float very long. So it's got a real short window. So I wouldn't recommend it, as a destination necessarily, just because this year it's not even floatable at all. So
Oh,
I'd,
really?
I'd be, I'd be foolhardy if I sort of promised it as a big attraction, but it's a beautiful river. And a lot of times, when you can float it, it's too dirty to fish. And so it's a beautiful float and it's worth it just for that. But I would say an even more famous river, the Smith, is the put in above White Sulphur, just a couple hours away from here. So, if folks don't already know about that, it's pretty well known overnight wilderness float, permitted river. It's just a fantastic fishery. It's regulated for good reason, just because before they started regulating it, it was kind of just lots of crowding on that river. And we can talk about that later with the Missouri. But it's a really great system. When you do get a permit or purchase a guide trip on that river, you really have a great experience. And that's
Yeah.
thanks to the permitting system, which I think everybody agrees has been a good
Okay.
idea. But
Yeah. I did a podcast on the Smith. I actually republished it just recently. And I
awesome.
remember in that podcast, Evan Youngblood was the guy's name. He's no longer a guide. Great guy, though. I got a chance to fish with Evan. I don't know if you know him,
Nice.
but
Just heard of him. Yeah.
have you? He said it can be muddy, like you could stick a flag in it, muddy, but it still fishes well, even when it's muddy.
Yep. A lot of nymphing with 0 and 1X and a bugger to a worm. And surprisingly, you catch a lot of really nice fish,
Yeah,
particularly
cool.
big brown trout for how small it is. Yeah.
What's the story with Holter Lake? Don't they call that the land of the giants?
Yep. Yeah. So there's a stretch. Holter Lake is just on the Missouri River. So there's a chain
Yeah.
of lakes above Holter Dam, which I guide below that stretch from Holter Dam to Cascade. It's a 35-mile, blue ribbon trout fishery. But above that, you've got a series of reservoirs, one of which has a stretch of the river we call the Gates of the Mountains, which was coined by the Lewis and Clark expedition.
Yeah.
They were coming through
Right.
the river. It was much lower at that time because it wasn't dammed, but they came through this beautiful canyon. And as the canyon sort of opened up, if you can imagine, as you make a turn and the canyon sort of, you get a different angle and they open up, it looked like the mountains had, they were a
Parted.
gate opening. Yeah. And it's an incredible sight. Even today, as it's more of a lake through there, and you can take tours through there through the Stillwater portion, or you can take a guide trip where you launch on the Stillwater portion on the marina, the Gates of the Mountains Marina, and you jet boat cross the lake up the river to another dam, Hauser Dam,
Oh,
and it's a short tailwater there that empties out into the lake. And yeah, it's been coined the land of the giants because the fish get really big because they have that still water to sort of get nice and fat and happy in, and they run up the river sometimes. And pretty special fishery and really popular, but super cool.
so you have to get in a jet boat to get to below that Hauser Dam, you said, and there's a little
Correct.
tailwater. That's the only way to get to it, or is there a road in there, or no?
Well, you could drive to Hauser Dam. So imagine just you could drive to Hauser Dam, hike down and fish wade fish that portion of the river. But if you put a drift boat in there or a raft, you would float out and end up in the middle of a lake, right?
Oh,
And so the best way to get to that portion and to float it is to motor up it to the
up
dam
to
and
it.
then float down. Yeah. And so, some folks, I don't guide that portion of the river, but some
Yeah.
guides will motor up, float down, and then motor up again and float down. Or what's becoming, just as popular is they'll fish the lake with, mostly sort of deep nymph, chironomid, calabatus presentation, leech patterns,
Okay.
and it can be really cool. Also, some good streamer fishing up there, and yeah, pretty cool fishery and worth checking out for sure.
Yeah.
I personally don't like depending on an engine for my livelihood every morning, so
Yeah.
I like the experience of, putting a boat in at the river and rowing a boat, down the Missouri and ending somewhere else. And that's just kind of like my idea of a guided fishing trip on the
Yeah.
river in Montana. So a lot of people love both experiences. I've had a ton of fun up at the Land of the Giants with friends of mine who guide up there. And a lot of clients that come down here do one day of each, so it's a good mix.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. Hey, anglers, if you're on the hunt for fishing gear that's as tough as you are, look no further than Adams Built Fishing Gear. Since 2014, Adams Built has been the go-to choice for anglers who demand quality without breaking the bank. Their lineup of lightweight waders, high-quality nets, and meticulously designed fly boxes is second to none. But here's what really impressed me. Adams Built stands behind their products like no other. Every single item is guaranteed to last. Yep, you heard that right. And get this, Adams Built waders even come with a lifetime repair replace guarantee, with you only paying for shipping. Now that's a deal you can't beat. So why settle for gear that won't last? Make the smart choice and gear up with Adams Built Fishing Gear today. Ask your local dealer for Adams Built or visit www.adamsbuiltfishing.com and tell them Steve sent you from the Destination Angler podcast. I first came across liquid fly dip floatants years ago when guides were mixing their own brews with lighter fluid and mucilin wax. It worked, but you had to wonder, what's it doing to the river? Recently, I tried some store-bought brands. One left a white crust on my fly, another left an oil slick in the water. Not good. No way I'm using that stuff. Then I found High and Dry, and let me tell you, this stuff is a game changer. It's built by scientists who actually fly fish, and it shows. Your fly floats like a cork, looks natural, and it's 100% environmentally friendly. No film, no gunk, no gilt. And their floatants work in any condition, from blazing heat to freezing cold. In my opinion, these are the best performing, most innovative floatants on the market today, hands down. So check out the full lineup of liquid floatants, line dressings, and cider waxes at highanddryfishingproducts.com. Your fly and the fish will thank you. All right, so let's talk about the Missouri where you fish. So it's Holter Dam down to Cascade. You said 35 miles, is that right?
Yep, 35 miles of tailwater. That's the stretch that's recognized as the Blue Ribbon trout fishery. Yeah.
Okay. And what makes it so amazing in your mind? What's the headline there?
Oh, there's a lot of factors. I mean, number one is the biomass, so we have a lot of food all year. So we have any mix of hatches from, mayflies to caddis to even some small stoneflies, combined with a lot of subsurface food like crustacean, sow bugs, scuds, crawfish. And so any given day, trout have 5 to 15 different species of bugs to choose from. And it's just created a really abundant food source and helps trout stay healthy, get big, live long. And that's given way to a really healthy fishery. Thanks to also some just pretty wise dam management, in the sense that, as they regulate the dam, Northwestern Energy keeps in mind the fishery and keeps in mind the fact that, that fishery is really important to not just anglers, but also an economy in our state. It's one of our biggest economies in Montana is fishing and tourism as a whole, but fly fishing
Right.
is, a big part of that. And so they recognize that, releasing the right amount of water at the right time is important to our business. And I think that's unique compared to other states that I've fished in, that where the dams are not necessarily as mindful of what fishermen want downstream. So
Yeah, you hear about that all the time. It can be great or it can be a huge problem. It sounds like
Right.
it's pretty great where you are.
It's good. There's a lot of communication, and obviously guides always want more cold water, and the folks upstream want water held in the reservoirs. And then there's, you add the layer of needing, the hydroelectric dam to produce power, and that's a different pull on the system. So, there's a lot of factors, but I think that, the powers that be are trying to balance all that. So
Yeah, good. And it's a top draw dam, correct? So
I'm glad you asked that, Steve. So, so Holter Dam.
why did they do that?
Well, we can get nerdy about dam stuff here. briefly, if that's all right, because
Yeah, please.
I have some contacts that work at Northwestern Energy that are sort of dam experts, and almost every day I see Holter Dam and talk to clients about the history of the dam and how it makes this fishery. And to be honest with you, a lot of the times I don't really know what I'm talking about. I just sort of spout off things that I've heard about this dam, whether it's, it's a gravity fed run of the river dam that, sometimes releases off the top, sometimes in the middle, whatever.
Oh.
And the reality, I've often said that it's not a bottom fed dam, because you can look at the dam and see water coming over the top, and at high water we get tons of stuff coming over the top, and that makes hotter water that's not great. But it is in fact not a top fed dam. I just was communicating with a contact of mine at Northwestern Energy, and I got a whole bunch of information that I can't promise that I've remembered all of it right now, but the reality is, so it can release around 6,000 CFS from the lower portion of the reservoir. So before it exceeds the flow of 6,000 or 6,200 CFS, give or take, it is releasing water from the bottom half of Holter Reservoir.
Oh, it is. Didn't know that.
Which is good because that water's colder, right? And it makes our tailwater great, even when we have hot ambient temps and low water and low snowpack. People come from all over Montana in like this time of year, especially to fish the Missouri because it maintains that colder water. When it exceeds 6,100 CFS, it releases it over the dam through a series of spill gates. And that's, of course, hotter water. Also carries with it a lot of vegetation. Also carries with it, interestingly, non-native species that we maybe don't want in the lower portion of the river, like walleye and perch, things like that, smallmouth, pike even. And so that's a concern that, that we can talk about. But that's the sort of gist of the dam. It's a run of the river dam, meaning that it's water in, water out. So it's dictated by our snowpack, by our precipitation, as much as, I would love for the river to be at around 6,000 to 8,000 CFS year round, just because that, keeps spawning beds healthy. It keeps a lot of the side channels with a little bit of current. It keeps, selfishly, it allows me to fish some of my favorite little nooks and crannies of the river. So boats can spread out. As much as we would love that, we kind of get what we get in that sense. So, if we have a bad snowpack, it's going to be bad water year. And as much as we love more water to be let out, you can't just empty those reservoirs upstream because that has adverse effects in lots of ways. So it's a run of the river gravity fed dam that is mostly bottom fed. So that's the nerdy answer. And I could give
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I could send you a lot of information that I just queried from my friend at Northwestern, and
this is good.
Some really interesting stuff.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that the water's coming over the top of the dam in the spring when they've got a lot of water, right? And then when you need cold water, like in, going into August here, when you need cold water, it's coming off the middle part. Is that right?
Right. Yep. Correct. Yeah. And to give you an idea of just our average flows, we, right now we're at about 4,000 CFS, which is a little lower. I'd like it to be higher for July going into August, but not terrible. We'll get as high as, in the past 10 years or so, we've gotten as high as 18,000 CFS, which is really high water, can be dangerous a little bit.
Right.
You can still fish it, that's the great thing about a tailwater. It stays clear for the most part, as long as the tribs aren't, dumping in mud. And those flushing flows, we call them, are really great for the river. They clear out a lot of sediment. They make some good macroinvertebrate habitat, clear off spawning beds. So it's great to get those high flushing flows at least, every couple years. So we're hoping for that every winter.
Right.
Yeah.
You had average snowpack this year out there?
We had an average snowpack, and then just, kind of weirdly, it all melted, and it's been a little bit lower than average flow year for most rivers, but we're doing okay. I've seen it much worse, and the trout are pretty resilient. Like I said, I'd love to see higher flows, but like I mentioned, the rivers like the Dearborn, unfloatable this year. I think it's a
Wow.
combination of, we got some early hot weather, snow gradually melted, the dry lands got saturated, and that was that. So we had a rainy day yesterday. We've had a few rainy days in the past week. That's always great. So
That's good.
yeah.
How wide is the river? I'm thinking 6,000 CFS, but it's a pretty wide river, isn't it?
It is wide. It's wide and fairly shallow. So, and I'd say, anywhere between 50 to 100 yards at any given point.
Oh.
I mean, there's parts where it floats through canyon stretches where it gets choked up quite a bit and the gradient drops a little bit. By dropping, I mean, very marginal. We don't have any serious whitewater on the Missouri. I mean, in 35 miles, you're talking about around, 75 to 100 feet of drop, so not much at all. Yep. And, average depth in terms of what we're fishing, anywhere from, 1 to 6 feet. And then there's some holes that are really deep, maybe 20 to 30 feet deep, but that's,
really?
An anomaly for sure.
Huh. Can you weight it in places?
It's super weightable, which is unique for rivers so big, right? And you see a lot of wade fishermen, especially in the fall when the flows drop a little bit. In the spring, not as common, but right now till November, you'll see folks on the banks, and trout spay fishing has gotten really popular in the fall, and super weightable. The access is great.
Is it good?
Yeah, in terms of just both public, formal fishing access sites to, there's a portion above between Craig and the dam, essentially, where there's a private ranch, huge ranch that borders the river, where they allow people to walk across that land to access the river. Yeah.
Wow.
And
who's that guy? I mean, that's rare.
Yeah. It's the Sterling Ranch has been around for generations, and they've sort of made some agreements and acknowledged that people want to access the river. So we try to, encourage people to leave no trace, and to be sort of ethical with how they're walking through the land and using the river. But yeah, it's a super great access program, and there's some obvious access points along the river there. And then we also just have a ton of boat ramps and access sites that are well maintained by the state. And
Okay. Dozens and dozens. Like, how many access ramps would you say?
Oh gosh, between the dam and Cascade, I could name them all off right now, but I'm going to just spitball and say 10 to 15.
Okay.
So, if you're looking to float, depending on how long you want to float, you can really cater it to your style of fishing and how long you want to be on the water.
Yeah.
And based on, where other boats are putting in. And so it's good in that sense that, as a guide, I can look at, what areas of the river are really crowded, how can I avoid those crowds, and how can I cater my float to make the best experience for a client. So we're lucky that we have, that number of access points, because a lot of rivers just don't have that.
Yeah. And so in the morning when you're deciding where to go, is it also, season, time of year dependent? Like, you like to be a little farther down in certain times of the year?
Yeah, further down, or, just gauging the out of town traffic. We get a lot of guides from elsewhere in the state when the freestones are blown out. There's a lot of guides that come and float certain sections of the river, and you could get into sort of turf wars about that stuff and get territorial. I try to remember that it's everybody's river. We're all trying
They're Americans too, huh?
Yeah. We're all, public land and water owners, and try to remain respectful. But yeah, you can sort of definitely factor that in. Where are the crowds going, and how can I avoid them? Yeah.
Okay. Here's Brian Oakland, founder of Got Fishing.
There's really no reason for an angler not to use Got Fishing when everything we do for you is free. We have the best trips around the world. We only work with the best outfitters, and we're definitely going to get you the best deal and the best dates, guaranteed. That's why we have clients come back time and time again. We have Don with us on this trip. This has been his 6th fishing adventure with Got Fishing, and I think if you asked him, it is because of all the little things. We don't tell people, we ask questions. What is it that you're looking for? What would be most important to you? Who's coming with you? What's your experience level? And really, at the end of the day, what is the most important aspect of this experience that you're looking to take home? And then from there, we just marry them up with some of the best lodges, let them take a look at 2 or 3 different options, and pick what's going to be best for them.
Well, there you have it, folks. A pretty good case for choosing Got Fishing for your next big adventure. So what are you waiting for? Give Brian a shout or visit gotfishing.com. The other thing I read about the Missouri is I've read that it's one big spring creek, but I've also read that there are some areas that are kind of riffly. What's your take?
Yeah, I think the Missouri River, I mean, and we can talk about more about this, as we go, but it's a really intimidating river, I think, for a lot of anglers, because you drive up to it, you walk down to the bank, and you look out, and a lot of places it looks kind of like a big lake, and you got a 9-foot 5-weight rod in your hand, and you say, what the heck do I do with this? Where do I
start?
Yeah, where do I even begin casting? And so in that sense, it does look like a big spring creek, just big flats. Maybe there's a riffle on the other side of the river that's 100 yards away. I can't wade over there. How do I even begin? So in that sense, it's a big spring creek in the sense that we have really great dry fly flats. We've got these long, grassy runs, beautiful, medium depth runs where fish can sit and rise to small insects. But we also have some really great shallow, riffly, caddis water. And I try to tell anglers, if I'm setting them up for a day on their own where they're going to kind of get that overwhelming feeling, that you just have to approach it like this river is made up of many smaller rivers inside of it. Every 5 feet of this river has its own little world of currents and insects and structure. And we have anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 trout per mile. And so
wow,
all the fish, so all the fish aren't over there. There might be a lot of fish over there but there's also probably some fish right here, where you're standing. And
Don't leave fish to find fish.
Exactly. So I tell people, it's just, it takes some patience. It takes a deeper form of looking and observing as an angler, which I love about the Missouri. But yeah, it can be really intimidating in that sense. But the fish inhabit many parts of the river. And like I said, it's made up of many smaller worlds that you can sort of pick apart as a wade angler if you'd like to. And even as a guide, there's a lot of times where I'm sitting on one part of the river and maybe I want to fish, that bank over there because I love it. But there's 5 guides floating down that side of the river. And so, I better figure out how to fish the right bank. And there's probably fish there. And that's a fun challenge. So.
Okay. So you're kind of having to bounce a little bit back and forth sometimes to avoid some of the other guides, or do you pretty much just get set in like a conveyor belt? All you guys are all lined up. Is that how it works?
I try to avoid those scenarios,
Okay.
That definitely happens, at a busy day in the spring and just, when it's sort of classic, great spring fishing and other rivers in Montana maybe aren't fishing as well because they're super high and blown out. You can have a little bit of that, that traffic in the morning. But like I said, it's a big river. There's a lot of fish. If, most guides are really good at just kind of getting some space from other folks. And
are they?
Yeah.
So can you get, so it obviously is the bank. And I feel like most of the time I've been fishing in Montana, I'm casting into the bank or along the bank, but with a river that's 1 to 6 feet deep all over, full of weeds, I imagine there's fish throughout the river all the way across. Is that right?
For sure. Yeah. That's why the drift boat is a really invaluable tool on the Missouri, is that it allows you to position yourself in a place in the middle of the river where you might not be able to wade to, but you can access this beautiful little ledge that you might, the average uninitiated angler might not see. But if you've been guiding for a little bit and fishing this river for a little bit, I always say I'm by no means the Missouri River expert, but every day I guide it, I try to add a little bit of intel to my mind that builds a map or a contour of the entire river, underneath the surface. So I'm trying to figure out those ledges and stuff, and I'm always learning that. But when you see a drift boat out in the middle of the river fishing, a certain seam, that usually they've got a plan. It's not just spraying and praying. There's a lot of different structure.
As an experienced guide, maybe doing that.
I'll try to be. I mean, there's certainly more experienced ones, but yeah. And the other thing is I always think it's funny, the old adage of wade anglers are always trying to wade out deeper to get out to that spot. And then the guys in the boats are always casting to the bank,
Yeah,
and
so
there's
true.
no shortage of that on the Missouri too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of great banks with riprap structure, or just nice, grassy ledges and cut banks. And so it's got a little bit of everything. And depending on, what the angler's looking to do and the hatches and the conditions, sometimes we are fishing tight to the bank all day, and so it's just got a lot of opportunities and a lot of ways to fish it. There's no one way to succeed on the mow, which is cool.
Say a little bit more about why. I've heard the dry fly fishing is absolutely fantastic, but would you agree with that? Are you typically, summertime on a dry, or are you doing a lot of nymphing still?
I love the Missouri because it presents a challenge for any level of angler. So if I'm given a brand new angler that's just never held a fly rod and wants to catch a fish and wants to get into the sport, I'm probably going to start off nymphing with them, just because that's the most effective means of fishing on the Missouri and on a lot of rivers. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Under a bobber.
Yeah. Just because it's the, you're targeting the largest food source, that life stage of the insects, and sow bugs, scuds, crawfish, etc. And so that can be really effective on the Missouri. And if I was ever aiming for catching the most amount of fish, which I rarely am doing, that's probably what I would do, nymph, and it's just a good way to get somebody hooked onto a fish, right? But we're blessed on the Missouri in the sense that we often have an abundance of insects that are in the adult life stage, that are hatching and landing on the water, whatever stage they're in. Sometimes 3 or more species of insects at a time doing that. And so because of that, you have, out of 4,000 trout per mile, you might have 1,000 of them that are deciding to rise to these insects. And so that gives you a really good opportunity to try to catch a pretty large fish on a small dry fly, which is, in my opinion, one of the more exciting things to do in the sport, right? And so if you have a more experienced angler, or somebody who wants a challenge, or who has heard about this thing called dry fly fishing, it's a great river for that. Yeah.
And then, so the more experienced angler, how does the river challenge the more experienced guy?
The fish aren't stupid. That's the thing. So the opportunities are there, right? And I'm not going to go as far to say that, trout are brilliant, because they're not, but they're really good at staying alive, right? And because that's their main job. And they also have such an abundance, such a conveyor belt menu of bugs floating by, that it's not like your average freestone where trout are really opportunistic, right? Where you can throw any random chubby out there and a trout's going to go for it, because they maybe haven't seen 5,000 insects float across the surface of the water all day. But the trout on Missouri usually have. And so in that sense, it presents a challenge that you have to match the shape, size, and silhouette of what these trout are seeing.
And each fish, is it like fish by fish basis, or is it pretty much, okay, in this run, they're all, hitting tricos?
Potted up. Like, yeah. Again, as many opportunities as you want, you could do either. So on a great day, I'll just give you a scenario. If I have a dedicated angler, that whether they're experienced at technical dry fly fishing or not, what I would love to introduce them to on the Missouri, and what it's sort of known for, is what some call headhunting, which is floating down the river, not casting, rod at the ready, looking for a single fish in a single spot that or your guide knows is a sizable fish because they can judge the rise form. They can maybe see the fish itself, and they can see the line that the fish is holding in. That's another thing fish do in really abundant biomass scenarios, is they can afford to hold in a particular line and simply rise their head a couple inches to eat the bug that they want, right? In a, let's say a colder, less nutrient dense freestone, for example, you're going to have a fish move maybe 20 feet for a dry fly, right? Which is an awesome experience. On the Missouri, that is a rare occasion, right? You have fish sitting and holding in a spot, and the bigger they are, the tighter they hold generally. And so what I would consider the big leagues of fly fishing is finding that one fish and observing that fish, anchoring the boat, or getting out and waiting, standing above that fish at a, let's say 20 to 50 feet distance, watching that fish's rhythm, what it's eating, placing a fly, casting from an upstream angle from that fish, placing the fly at downstream where the leader and the tippet and the fly line are all stacked upstream of the fly with a beautiful reach cast, feeding line to the fish. This is all the first cast, mind you, which is going to be perfect. And you feed that fly to the fish.
There always are.
And it eats it, and you set the hook, and that's the dream scenario, right? And that's the Missouri is one of the few places you can do that, with some consistency. So
yeah, and then the next problem you have is keeping them out of the salad.
For sure, yeah.
Because if they're in a line, boom.
Landing them is the second battle, and the least exciting one, I would say. Watching them eat and coming tight to a fish is 99% of the fun, in my opinion. When you're anchored up above a 23-inch brown trout and you hook them on a size 18 little CDC dry fly, the odds are against you landing that fish, but you've done the job when you get them to eat it, and that's super exciting, I think.
What's your setup? What X are you using in that scenario? You down to 5, 6X? What do you have to do?
5X, I think, and most guides would probably agree on the Missouri. 5X is sort of the standard with a pickier fish. I think 6X is pushing it ethically, maybe, just because if you're really trying to land that fish on 6X, if it's a big fish, you're going to have to fight it for a long time, and that's just questionable. And compared to other rivers like, in Colorado where you're fishing 7X, fish are not that leader shy on the Missouri. And so a good presentation with a downstream drift, fly first on 5X would get it every time.
Yeah. Do you ever drop to 4X on those bigger fish?
For sure.
I find the difference between a 5 and a 4 is tremendous.
Yeah.
On landing a big fish.
4X, if you're handling a fish right, man, they can pull pretty hard and you can land them.
Yeah.
I love 4X. Earlier in the season, 4X is all you need. And often I'll go with trickier fish, especially with clients who maybe can't see the flies as well. I'll go a longer leader, 9-10 feet to 4X to a little bigger dry high vis fly, and then a 5X to a teeny tiny fly that they're actually going to eat. And
all right, so Micah, coach me through. I'm that guy. I'm at 45-degree angle upstream, and coach me through how to get my fly on top of that fish in the right lane. Like, what are the mistakes people make? What are the things that you tell them before that first cast?
Number one mistake, casting too much. So if I see a fish, and if we see a fish, let's say, in a good day of fishing, and you're hunting, solitary big fish to try to catch on a small dry fly, you might have 10 fish that you locate throughout the day. That's a good day. And I think that's acceptable, just because you're looking, you're not looking for a pod of dinks, you're looking for one big guy, right? And, or big gal, and that's kind of the fun is the hunt. And so once you see that fish, it doesn't help you to rush into it. That fish, if it's happy and feels comfortable rising to a steady stream of of insects. It helps if you just sit there and observe the fish and make a plan first. And so it's not unusual for me to get in that position, anchor the boat above this fish, and not even touch the rod. To sometimes what I'll do is pull out, I have a dry erase board in my boat. And the first thing I'll do is pull out the dry erase board and we'll draw out a literal diagram.
Seriously? Really?
Absolutely.
That's
A
I've never
literal
heard of that.
diagram of planning to catch this fish.
Really?
And I'm a teacher by trade. So that's kind of like my thing.
I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
But
chalkboard.
yeah. And I think it's worth doing that. If you're going to get one shot at this fish, because a lot of times that's all you get is one cast. And if the cast is bad, that fish is going to be in the next zip code. And so the first cast has to be great. And it helps to plan and think about it and not get, too eager, because these aren't the kind of fish where you can slap the water 20 times and then finally get a good cast and they're going to eat it. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, especially in a big pod of hungry fish, on a cloudy day. Let's say they feel real comfortable and you can just, get 20 bad drifts over them and 40 of the fish go down and 5 of them are still there and 1 of them eats it, and that's great.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about, trying to be as strategic as we can, trying to catch the biggest fish we can on small dry flies, it helps to be patient. And I really love that challenge and that game and the opportunity to teach, and super fun.
All right. So how do you measure your cast so you're in that lane? How do you do that?
That's tough. I mean, some casting on the other side of the boat helps. Practicing.
But how do you know how long that is, right? I mean, it's like, oh shoot, I'm still 3 feet short. Zip.
Being short's better than being long.
Yeah.
Number one. And I think, it goes back to your question. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen people make is casting too far, casting too much.
Yeah.
You don't need the double haul in this river. You don't need to shoot line even when you're casting to a fish like this. I like to cast with the line pinched more or less in my hand.
So you know how much you have out.
I know exactly how much I have out. And if we're talking about this kind of fishing, Steve, which I love, I'm not discriminating against nymphing. I'm not discriminating against, hopper fishing or streamer fishing. But if we're talking about this kind of fishing right here, it almost always has to be a downstream presentation.
So interesting.
So we're talking.
You can't even come at them like 45 degrees upstream where they're still seeing pretty much the fly.
You can, but you're less likely of catching that fish.
Okay, so you let that fly go over them and let it drift like how many feet past the fish before you start stripping it in to try again?
So generally, if the fish refuses it and your flies past them, I just let that fly swing out into the lane below you, and then you pick it up.
Yeah.
But generally, what I'm trying to do with the boat, and most of the time what we're doing is fishing out of a boat, is anchor the boat so the angler is positioned at a 45-degree angle above the fish, upstream of the fish.
Yeah.
And we are casting to the fish downstream. Generally, what I tell anglers to do is cast the fly like you're going to land it right on the fish's head, right where that rise form happened. And then on your final stroke of your cast, you're just finishing with a reach upstream. So you're landing the fly, not super far in front of the fish. That's another big mistake people make, is they want to land the fly way above the fish and try to get this long, beautiful drift down to the fish. I like to land the fly in what I call the fish's decision zone. And this comes from Vince Marinero. Do you know him?
Yeah, from LaChort, right?
Yeah, wrote many great books, and he has a philosophy about having high PPMs, presentations per minute. So landing the fly, not trying to get these long, beautiful drifts, but landing the fly within the fish's sight window. I'm talking 3 to 7 feet above the fish. Not right on the fish, but a little above it.
Yeah.
And because if you land the fly 20 feet above the fish, you might get a great drift for 10 feet. But once it gets to the fish, You got so much line out, and there's lots of micro currents that are pulling your line. You're going to have a terrible drift by the time it gets to the fish.
And that fish is gone.
It might be gone. Yeah, but dragging that fly over the fish, not good. It's not going to help us out.
Do you think the fish, it helps, like that 3 to 7 feet, that's the fish can actually see it just flutter and hit the water? And that's because I've had fish where, I'm 10 feet and it floats over, they don't notice it.
Right.
Right. But if I get it 3 to 7 feet, like you're saying, they notice it. They saw it come down.
I think
is that what's going on?
I don't necessarily think they're witnessing the fly land as much, because there's been studies, and I think, LaFontaine has written about this as well, about the wind, the cone that the fish is looking in.
Yep.
I think when you're landing 7 feet, I don't think that's necessarily in its cone. I think it's looking more above. I think what you're doing is you're landing that fly and you're in control of that fly, until it gets to the fish. Whereas if you get those long drifts, you think you're in control, but that fly has little micro drag. And so the reason I like to land it close is if you get that nice downstream presentation, reach up, all you have to do, you don't have to feed line at all. You just follow the fly with your hand, and just that process of reaching up as your fly lands and then following the fly down, that gets you about a 15-foot drift.
Yeah.
Right.
Great
but
drift.
If you try to land it 20 feet above and then you're feeding the line out and you're shaking the rod, forget it. Some people can do it. I've, fed fish 30 feet down river or more, but it's hard. It's not, the odds are against you again.
The second everything pulls tight, you're done, aren't you?
Right.
You need a little.
And then that's not to say that they don't eat it on the swing sometime, which is also super fun.
They'll chase something, won't they? A little movement. Does that happen in Missouri? Like all of a sudden they're chasing something, it's moving.
Oh, for sure. And I love, and I love soft tackles. I'm a big old school, partridge and orange guy. And so that is super fun. And if I've got a day off and they're eating caddis, I'm probably going to pick swing and soft tackles over drift and drive, to be honest.
No kidding. Give us the nickel, give us the X's and O's on the chalkboard and how to swing a wet fly.
It's tough. So it's super fun. It can be good for the beginner in the sense that even when you're getting a bad drift, and I actually wrote a little article about this for doing the stream, but it can be good for the beginner in the sense that even when you're getting a bad drift, sometimes a fish will eat a soft tackle, right? But the way I love to do it is sort of cast the fly a little past and above the fish, and then sort of high stick the rod so the soft tackle is staying, up in the water column, maybe a little sunken, and also not swinging too fast. Like I'm in control of that swing. And then I've found that that's kind of the most effective. Sometimes I'll do that behind a dry fly. And then when you see them eat, it can be really tough to land them just because it's such an aggressive eat and you're immediately tight to them. And so having either a really light drag on or just letting that line out as soon as they take it, because it's, a lot of times you're on 5X, little bitty soft tackle.
Snap.
Yeah.
A little 12-inch brown can bust off your 5X on a.
For sure.
It's kind of like fishing a streamer in a way, right?
Exactly.
It's going to be a hard snap.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. Gosh, it's already been 50 minutes. I can't believe it. Great conversation.
Yeah.
Give us the 2-minute rundown on the hatch chart. Like when does the dry fly season start? What first, second, third, what happens?
Yeah, we've got a number of mayfly hatches on the river. I'll just kind of quick and dirty, Baetis is our first one. Springtime, smaller bugs. The advantage is fish aren't super, tuned into anglers at that time. So that could be a really fun hatch. We're talking late April, late May. Super fun hatch. We also get a fleeting squalla hatch, which can be super fun as well. PMDs, which I'd say is our most famous hatch, are one of our largest consistent mayfly hatch, I would say. June is prime time until right now. We're tail end of PMDs. Tricos, super tiny mayfly.
How small on the Missouri?
20. Yeah.
Oh, 20. Okay.
A lot of times you can fish a bigger fly like a cluster midge because they'll eat them in clusters. that starts, tail end of PMDs. It came a little earlier this year, so late June to August, early September. And then to round out the mayflies, we get pseudos, small mayfly 2022. We'll get a calabatus hatch, kind of,
Okay.
sprinkled in there, late summer. That's super fun one. Larger mayfly, obviously. And then the Baetis returns late September, October. And then caddis throughout the year. We've got a bunch of different caddis hatches. I won't pretend to know all the genus species of caddis, but yeah, I'm not a Latin major.
You didn't swallow a Latin dictionary.
Right. But some super fun ones, anywhere from small black caddis, black and tan caddis, to giant, size 14 October caddis, which is really cool.
Okay. Salmon flies? No?
Just coming out of the tributaries. Yeah. Very rarely, but not to say you can't fish a big dry fly. We've got a pretty healthy hopper,
Okay.
population, because the river rolls through prairies and plains and ag land. And ants, I love a glitter ant.
A glitter ant. Okay.
Yeah.
What's your favorite PMD pattern?
Oh, high vis spinner, 100%.
High vis spinner. Okay.
Yep. Super popular dry fly just year round on the Missouri. It's just a really delicate, small profile, but little puffa, high vis yarn, easy to see, floats well. I'll fish that a lot with if the fish are being tricky, with a smaller, sort of impossible to see thing behind it.
Okay. So you do that, you double up, one you can see, one you can't.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, the high vis spinner, size 18, 16, if you're, great presentation, they should eat it most of the time. But
Yeah. What about your trico? What trico patterns do you like?
there's a little trico high vis spinner that I really like. That cluster midge is really good. A buzz ball, that's another one. It's sort of a
Buzzball.
yeah. I don't think it's a very exciting fly, just because it looks like it sounds. It's sort of a Griffiths
But if it
gnat.
catches fish, who cares, right?
Yeah, exactly. And my favorite flies to fish are caddis flies. Just because a lot of times, especially in these blanket trico hatches, you can't compete with the naturals, and so I think there's we haven't talked about that, but there's definitely a science to, presenting something that is not insane in the sense that it's totally not matching the hatch, but it's also like maybe a side hatch or a parallel hatch. So, fish might be just gulping these tricos, but if you just cast another trico out there, like why would it, why would it want to eat that, But maybe you cast a little, little caddis that it sees every once in a while, and it decides, hey, that's a little more protein. It doesn't scare me off.
Fish turn off of a fish that's feeding on tricos. They're in their lane, trico. Will they turn off of a trico and actually do that? They'll take a caddis?
They will, for sure. Yep.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Super interesting. You talk to different people. I had one guy I talked to, Russ Miller, was telling me that he changes flies all the time. Almost on every hole. Puts on a different fly. Of course, he's in the fly selling business. He works for Umpqua. But he changes them all the time. Other guys are like, nope, I'm changing something else. I'm changing depth. I'm changing leader length. I'm doing that before I change my fly. I don't know. What's your take?
I think, if the fish has seen the fly on a good drift and you've timed it right, and it sees the fly once, maybe twice, and it hasn't even, tried to eat it, I'm going to change flies.
Interesting. And try again.
Yeah. But the thing is, and I'm not saying that this is incredibly difficult to get a good drift, right? And so with the average angler or even the experienced angler, you might not get to that point for half an hour. You might try, you might keep casting. I'm working on my dry erase board, you've dunked the flies, it's got weeds on it, I'm cleaning it off, drying it off. You try it again, okay, finally the 20th cast, you got a good drift over him. He was, he had just risen, the rhythm was right, he didn't eat it. I think we need to change flies,
Change fly.
But that comes pretty late. I have a lot of people say, oh, do you think we should change the fly? And a lot more often than not, my answer is he hasn't seen it yet. He hasn't seen it in the right
Right.
way yet. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Good conversation, Micah. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about guiding for the future.
Yeah.
Why and how did you get connected with guiding for the future?
So Guiding for the Future is a program, sort of an extended education program for guides in Montana put on by Fishing Outfitters Association of Montana, which is an organization that represents guides and outfitters, both, in a policy way. In the legislative session, they're helping guides and outfitters, represent themselves and, working a lot of conservation issues. And they decided that, or they sort of recognized a need for guides to be, have an opportunity to be trained up in conservation issues and improve their, I guess, acumen and in the, how to be better guides ethically. So, how to learn the river better, how to educate your clients in a way that is thoughtful and preserve this industry for generations to come. And so I knew a lot of friends of mine who are guides that had gone through the program and really recommended it. And I'm sort of a sucker for extended education and certifications.
Learning.
And so, yeah. And so I took the course and really loved it. It's got an online component that you do for a couple months. It's just sort of open-ended learning that is mostly based around a few things: history of conservation, just broadly in the United States, and entomology, and guiding ethics, and first aid. I'd say those are kind of the main pillars.
Huh.
And then there's a test at the end of that that's actually quite difficult. And after all that, all the guides that have been participating in this course, it's a one-time yearly course that is sort of competitive to enter, and they take, I can't remember the exact number, 10 to 20 guides, let's say, all in varying stages of their careers, from beginners to people who've been doing it for 20 plus years. We all meet at a retreat for a long weekend and discuss the coursework and get really in-depth presentations and classroom time from entomologists, biologists,
Nice.
policy experts, and we go out and do field work. We had this year, when I did it, this was 2 years ago now, we met on the Bighorn River in Fort Smith, and super great time. I hadn't spent a lot of time on that river, and we got to go out and measure CFS the old fashioned way, which is super fun and kind of difficult to do in March in Montana. But we did it. And yeah, and then had some great lessons from a hydrologist about, how they assess spawning viability in different areas of the river, and just how to talk about, rivers and different substrates, and what a healthy river looks like, and, what a struggling river looks like. And then talk to entomologists about how to do bug surveys, went out and did, insect surveys, and learned how to assess a river's health, and got kits to do that as guides on our own rivers. And then got, lessons from the folks that keep fish wet, and lessons from the policy folks at TU on how to get more involved in conservation issues. And
Wow.
yeah, great program about, just how to be a better guide, and really nothing about how to catch more fish, which is, one thing that was missing intentionally from that program. We're all good anglers. We all know how to catch fish, but how do we help the river, and how do we teach our clients how to, how we're trying to help the river too? And ultimately, I think it makes us all better guides, and brings us more business too.
I was going to ask you, so how has it changed your approach to guiding and experience you're giving your clients?
Well, I've always tried to be like an educational guide, like I said, like I love teaching. I got into guiding because I was, adjuncting as an English teacher and needed something to do in the summers, and guiding kind of is, became my preferred classroom. And so now I do it full time. Don't teach as much, but it's changed my days in the sense that even if you're a great guide, most of your day is not filled with netting fish. There's a lot. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in between, talking to your clients, engaging with other guides and, anglers at the boat ramp, looking at the river, talking about issues concerning the river. And so how do you fill that time? Do you feel that time talk a lot of, you might be a guy who talks about how much you hate your ex-wife all day or something,
Hopefully not.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear that.
that's the nightmare scenario. Right. And so like,
right.
I try to be, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at this or that anybody is or can be, but I try to be a well-rounded guide in the sense that I want to educate people about the history of this place and this river and the different issues that are facing this river and, our trout populations and how we're working to improve the trout populations or, oh, you notice this algae in the river. Well, what's that doing? How can we, is that good or bad? Why is it here? And so
that's cool.
There's lots of ways to spend the day. And I think it's better if you spend them, leaving a client with a little more knowledge about the natural world and how to make it a little better,
Do you think it helps if people fly into Montana, they fish for a while? Sure, they care about Montana. I feel like the more you understand about Montana, the more you understand about the hydrology of the Missouri River below the Holter Dam and what's going on, what the issues are, maybe you care more.
For sure.
And maybe you get busy and get active.
Yeah, exactly. And, it could be as simple as somebody joining Trout Unlimited or Backcountry Hunters and Anglers or something like that. Or it could be something as intricate as them having some talking points to share with their fishing buddies back home, that also, get involved.
I find in Indiana, you talk to people that don't trout fish and you tell them you catch and release everything. They look at you like you got 4 eyeballs,
Yeah.
And you try to explain it to them. Like, oh, a lot of them walk away mumbling something about the guy's crazy,
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's just kind of like a very basic thing that I find like a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, that's an easy conversation on the Missouri because it's like if every guide kept their limit every day on the Missouri, which most of us probably could, I mean, we'd empty the river pretty quickly.
Yeah, empty.
And that's not to say that I don't keep a fish every once in a while, usually not out of the Missouri, but, I just fished a creek the other day that they're trying to restore cutthroat populations and there's a lot of brook trout in the creek. And so I kept a few brookies and cooked them up for breakfast and it was great.
For breakfast?
Oh yeah, with some eggs.
Really? Brook trout and eggs?
For sure.
That's awesome.
So I don't want to discriminate against people who do keep fish. It's like, but that's, it's all part of the bigger conversation, so.
So, all right. So what do you think a guide's role is in protecting the resource, right? Because, you hear about hundreds of boats on the Missouri on a busy day. Of course, there's 35 miles, but still hundreds of boats. That's a lot of boats, so you guys are trying to make a living. Here I got a podcast. We're talking about it. So what do you think our responsibility is?
I mean, I always feel like there's a paradox in guiding or any job in the outdoor industry, which is that we all love these places and we love the resource and we love the fish. But inherently, my job is based off of, profiting off of putting pressure on this resource, and I try not to be ignorant of that or ignore that fact. And so I struggle with that a little bit, the fact that I'm part of the problem. I'm driving to the river every day and putting my boat in and dragging my anchor through the gravel that, might affect spawning habitat, and so I think that every guide, I don't think this is a big challenge. I think most guides are aware of this. Every guide should be aware of the pressure that they are, implicit in putting on this resource. And I think it's our responsibility to not stop doing that necessarily, but to acknowledge that and to maybe try to, as much as we can, counterbalance that pressure with advocacy, whether that's, being active members of whatever conservation organization you care about, or, testifying in a hearing in your legislative session where they're trying to affect water quality or stream access or whatever. But I think as much as you care about fishing and making money as a fishing guide, you should care just as much about protecting the resource. So I try to challenge people to do that. And, as guides, we have a big off season where, what are you going to do? Play video games and drink beer or get involved, maybe you can do a little of both, but
Yeah.
I think we need to be involved. We need to talk about how guiding affects, how fishing in general affects the resource. I don't think it affects it nearly as much as some other factors like, water pollution, whatever. But we're the stewards of these places. We're the ones there every day. We know them intimately better than, some biologists do because,
Yeah.
we're looking at it every day. So as much as you care about these fish and catching a big brown trout and getting to say you make a living on the river, which is incredible, care just as much about protecting it. And that's a challenge to try to give myself, and I think
Yeah.
I hope other people, try to do that as well. But, and again, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, but it's just something that, a conversation I have in my head a lot, is,
I hear you. Well,
yeah,
and take guiding for the future. I mean, that's a good start.
yeah.
Get your mind thinking differently. Is it too easy to become a guide in Montana?
That's a good question. There's a lot of guides, and some days there's so many, it just feels like it feels a little overwhelming, especially on the Missouri where it's a famous river that can withstand a lot of this pressure because we have such healthy conditions and trout populations are really good. It's a huge part of our economy and I don't want to hurt that. I do think that I'm in favor of more regulation on guiding and outfitting in Montana. And I say that with some hesitancy in the sense that I think making a living as a fishing guide or outfitter should still be possible despite regulation. But I do think there's been some efforts in all the legislative sessions over the past, decade, I would say, in Montana to restrict the amount of guides and outfitters operating on rivers in Montana. And it's always
Right.
a really heated conversation because it's like, how do you, we don't have great data on, oh, there's this many guides operating on this stretch of river every day. We just don't have that data right now. And so it's hard to point at the guides and say, they're the problem.
Right.
People love to say that, because a lot of non-guides see a fancy drift boat and they just assume that's a guide, or they see a raft and they assume that's a guide in their way. But I think there's, just a lot of the regular public that's out there too. But I think that if we're going to preserve this resource and preserve, quality fly fishing in Montana, we have to talk about how we address crowding and
Right.
and how we address the numbers of people becoming guides and outfitters. And so, yeah, it's a really difficult conversation to have because a lot of people will propose, well, no more guides and outfitters, no more licenses. And then some people will say, well, that's kind of what's great about Montana is you can come here and become a guide and kind of work your way up and then become an outfitter and kind of own your own business. And I love that, that process as well. Personally, I'm in the process of becoming an outfitter and hope to one day, operate a business in that way mindfully, and sort of acknowledging the issues in conservation and crowding. But I do think we need to talk about that. I don't know what the answer is necessarily, but
like the Smith River.
yeah. And the Smith is a great example of successful permitting of a river. And yeah.
And of course, now I don't want to say nobody talks about the Smith River, but I did a show on it in my first year, and I thought it was an awesome podcast. It didn't get a ton of hits. I mean,
Really?
it was an average show, and you'd think the Smith River,
Right.
should be on everybody's dream bucket list someday to fish that. So if all these big rivers in Montana become permitted, I don't know, would people start going somewhere else? I mean, some of them would have to because you can't all get on there.
Well, yeah, and I don't think permitting has to necessarily mean it's hard to fish those places, right? The Smith is an example of a place where it is. Fewer people are going to be able to float the Smith today versus how it was, 30 years ago before it was permitted. But I think we're at a point now where we could introduce some, I think, some pretty common sense permitting it once we do have data that could still keep the thriving outfitting industry in Montana, but also just kind of nudge it a little toward having a quality experience, because nobody wants to go to a boat ramp in Montana, pay big bucks for a guided fly trip. I know it's expensive, and have 20 boats lined up waiting to get in the water. Nobody
Sitting
wants
for
that.
45.
Yeah, nobody wants that experience. And that happens sometimes on the Missouri. I think, if you're a guide who can kind of play the traffic a little bit, like I said, there's a lot of access points. We have a big stretch of water. Doesn't happen that much, but I think, people want to have a quality experience in nature, and that's just not part of it, in my experience.
Yeah, I think it's a good answer, Micah. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because it feels like it's kind of around the corner, that
Yep.
it's coming. All right, switching gears. Tell me about the Marine Corps. How was your time? You were stationed in Hawaii.
Yep.
What's up with that? How'd you pull that one? You won a bet? What happened?
I got lucky. Well, first of all, the Marine Corps is kind of an escape strategy. I grew up in Houston, which is, in retrospect, I wrote a whole book about it, and love the city. Love the city. I think it's a sort of underrepresented, cultural gem as a place. The Texas coast is awesome, but it just was not a successful high school student, and was just a little wild, and needed a place to, I guess, exercise my wildness. And so I was not
No, wait, this is a college professor confessing everything right now, I think. Isn't that what's going on?
Yeah. So I was not college material right away. So Marine Corps was a good strategy. I wanted to do something sort of out there and extreme, and so I, enlisted when I was 17.
Holy smokes!
With the waiver signature of my mother, and
really
went to boot camp a couple weeks after graduation in San Diego, and then I did a little infantry training, and then got assigned Hawaii as my station, which was amazing until I got sent overseas right when I got there. But I did get to spend some time in Hawaii, and it was super fun.
Did you learn you went bone fishing while you're there, I hope, right?
I did. Yeah. That was probably the first time I held a fly rod, was on the Marine Corps base, Hawaii. I had a friend of mine who, we were both about to get out of the Marine Corps. Our enlistments were ending, and he was, came into my barracks room and said, "Oh, I found this super fun thing. It's called fly fishing, and I've been doing it here at the base." And
that's great.
Yeah,
you're coming with me.
Yeah, and so I checked it out. I won't say that I was successful as a brand new fly angler in one of the harder places to bonefish in the world, but
yeah,
it was super fun. I enjoyed it, and then when I got out, I moved back to Texas for a brief period and went to an instructional class, like fly fishing 101 class, at a fly shop in Round Rock called Living Waters, which is great shop, and learned kind of the basics, and hit the ground running. So ended up learning how to fly fish, teaching myself how to fly fish, being really bad for a long time on the Guadalupe River for trout down there, which is
Guadalupe.
Which is kind of the subject of the tragedy right now, which has been really hard to watch, because I spent a lot of time down there, and I totally can kind of understand how that carnage happened with the amount of summer camps and stuff like that along that river. But beautiful place, and kind of the home of my fly fishing beginnings.
Did I get this right, that you drove back down there to rescue your mom and traded your Jeep for a boat?
Yeah, so I was in grad school in Iowa for creative writing, and I was working on a book about Houston and the Texas coast, and just why that area was important and interesting, and kind of a book about the history of that place, and right when I finished it, or a draft of it, Hurricane Harvey hit. That was 2017, and devastating storm. Is to this day our nation's largest rain event. 60 inches of rain fell.
Wow,
In
60. I didn't know that.
Yeah, in a matter of 24 hours in some places in Houston, and my folks still live in Houston. My mom and stepdad, and they were surrounded by their house was surrounded by the flood, kind of the upper reaches of Buffalo Bayou, and so I went down to my mother was trapped in these floodwaters, and I had a friend that lived in Tulsa who had a boat, and and so I met him down there, and we drove to Houston until we couldn't drive anymore, and we put the boat in and started riding around, and I was also a reporter at the time and writing freelance, and so I did I was just interviewing people as we were riding through the city and taking photos, and ended up reaching my mother, and she was
You
okay, and
did?
the flood had
Huh.
receded, and we sort of holed up with her for a while, and
Wow.
yeah,
Was she on the rooftop? Or I mean, the floods receded, but at some point was she,
she was
climbing up
her whole
trees? And
she no never that bad. I mean, she was very lucky in that most of the houses around her took on water, and hers just barely took on water, but she had a ton of animals. She still does, and we were always kind of a home of strays, and at one point in the middle of the night, an airboat came up to her porch and said that it was time to evacuate, and she said, well, I've got my animals. And they said, that's all right, we can take them. And she said, well, I've got like 13 cats. And they were like, yeah,
they're
we
like,
can't take
"Oh,
that. So
really?
she
And you had to
stayed. Yeah.
decide? Ooh.
Yeah. So she stayed,
So she stayed.
yeah. So she stayed and wrote it out, which a lot of people did.
Wow.
And she, she's no stranger to that. We grew up in that stuff. But yeah, after that happened, I ended up writing a book that was kind of a blend of the reporting I had done and the book that I had been working on already about that area. And so that came out in 2023.
What's it called?
It's called We Hold Our Breath. And
Okay.
yeah,
Texas storms.
yeah.
Man, your best story out of the Marine Corps from Iraq or Afghanistan.
Oh gosh. Oh, one time we in Afghanistan, I was stationed at a little small patrol base, just a couple squads of people, between 12 and 20 Marines in this abandoned mud hut in very rural Helmand Province, and no running water, no electricity, but occasionally we could barter with locals for block of ice or a Pepsi
Really?
or something like that. And
Really? Oh my
and
gosh.
one time we were eating MREs, so it was just, this is 9 months of MREs, and so we were
Ugh.
hungry for some fresh food, and we bartered with the local for 10 kilos of chicken, and
10 kilos.
yeah, we were gonna have a chicken barbecue. We had like made a little grill, we got some wood, and
MacGyver's.
when he came to deliver it, he brought us 10 live chickens. And
Wait a
so
minute.
this is the first time any of us had slaughtered chickens, but we killed 10 chickens that day and ate them.
No
It's the
farm boys there, huh?
best chicken I had ever had.
Yeah, I'll bet. After months of MREs, is that what you're
Right,
doing? That's
right.
like Spam, basically, isn't it? And some crackers.
It's rough on the gut for sure.
Is it?
Calorie
Holy
rich, but
smoke.
yeah.
Wow. Now, I have read that there's trout in Afghanistan.
Oh man,
Did you
I
know
didn't know
that?
that. Probably not where I was, but maybe in the mountain regions. That's awesome.
I read a snow trout and I also read brown trout. But I've
Cool.
read a kind of weird, it's a different kind of trout. It's like, I don't know. It's nothing that we're fishing for over here. But I
Yeah.
was preparing for this. I read about brown trout. So,
Huh.
but you didn't,
Interesting.
when you were crossing the streams in Afghanistan, were you kind of looking around?
I didn't do much fishing. It was mostly canals, and I don't think there
Ah,
many fish could live in there. But
yeah. Is that right? Oh my gosh. So are you still writing?
still writing. I do some freelance stuff, and then just always looking for a next big project. Not really sure what that would be about, but I do love the Missouri and kind of the history of the river, and
Yeah.
maybe something about that. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you meet Geirach?
Oh, John Geirach.
Yeah.
So a couple years ago, shortly before his death, I guided for a program or an event called Hooks for Books in Missoula, which is a fundraiser event for the creative writing program at the University of Montana, which I attended. And Chris Dombrowski is the director of that program now, also a fishing guide and outfitter, great person, great writer. And he started this great event where we have, several days of fishing. People, pay for 3 days or more of guided fishing, sort of on the terms that it's a donation to the program. And each night there's, entertainment, great food, drinks, etc. And John Geirach was kind of the headlining event for for this program. And I was sort of the opener on the first night. As a writer, I read part of my book, and I also
cool.
got to guide for the event. So got to guide some donors, and John actually went fishing on the same stretch I guided that day on the Blackfoot. And so that was super cool to fish alongside him and meet him that night. And sort of tragically wasn't with us for much longer, but amazing person, amazing writer. Yeah, really grateful to have met him.
Did you talk to him at all? I mean,
for sure. Yeah. It was.
You did?
Yeah, we met and talked a little bit about writing, and luckily I had a couple books with me, and I gave him one, and I wish I would have had one of his books with me to have him sign. But super nice, and yeah.
That guy is like a modern day Mark Twain. He can just turn a phrase, can't he?
Brilliant writer, and yeah, like there's a lot of writing about fly fishing. To be honest, I don't like a lot of it, and because it's hard to write about fly fishing because it's been done so much. And the last thing I want to read is about some schmuck, going to this beautiful place and coming tight to a permit. I'd like to read about the sort of minutia around that, but the sort of heroic escapades are pretty tired, and Geirach was great at the noise around fly fishing and the sort of beauty of the culture, not just catching fish.
Right. I feel like he's a great observer of people.
For sure. Yep.
Like his books are really about people.
Absolutely.
And just like I said, just the way he can just turn a phrase and just sum it up exactly, just say exactly. I don't know. I think that's really hard to do in writing.
Totally.
Anyway. All right. One more question.
Yeah.
I got a couple more questions. Your most embarrassing guide story. Come on.
Oh,
you gotta get it out there.
I didn't know that one was coming.
No, I didn't put that on my list.
Oh my God. I've got a lot of them. I mean,
oh man,
when you're starting out guiding, it's like every day is a learning experience. And then, every once in a while I do something ridiculous or forget something. I think a few years ago was a really windy day, and I had a couple clients in the boat, had a great day of fishing. We were with this big group. I was guiding for this lodge. We come into the ramp, and the wind is like howling downstream. And so I had to let a lot of anchor rope out to get the boat to stick and then park us next to the ramp, And so I do that. I let out, let's say 40 feet of anchor rope, boat hits the ramp. I let the folks out. I get out, go get my truck, back down. As I was backing down, the wind had shifted to blow the boat the other direction. And so I get down to the bank, and everybody's down there looking at my boat, and it's in the middle of the river. And, the anchor has not moved. It's just the boat is, in the middle of the water. And so needless to say, I had to, disrobe a little bit and swim out and get it.
Did you swim out there? That's funny.
And there were a few pictures taken, but
okay. All right. There's knowledge is power.
Kind of a bonehead move,
pictures,
but
they got proof. That's not too bad. I don't know. That's not too bad. Have you mastered guiding?
Absolutely not. No, I think that's what I love about it. You kind of never will. every day's new, every client's new, even if it's somebody you've fished with a bunch, every morning you kind of start over. And I like that challenge. And whether it's, teaching somebody how to catch a fish to playing a little bit of a life counselor in the boat, which
Yeah.
a lot of times a guide day leads to. I enjoy that challenge. I'm not always great at it. Some days it's not a great match, and I guess I want to emphasize my being on the show does not at all imply that I'm an expert or have mastered it or ever will, but I like ending the day feeling like I've worked hard, and like
Yeah.
guiding always presents that opportunity,
Yeah.
which not all jobs do. And so I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. I love that. Great answer. Favorite shore lunch? Do you give clients shore lunches?
I do. Yeah. I love, so I hunt a lot, and every year I, am usually lucky to kill at least a deer, sometimes an elk. And I really like cooking and have gotten into smoking and curing meats. And so every year I try to
Wow.
do something a little different. And so, summer sausage or something with a nice, interesting cheese. I'm a big cheese fan.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat that as kind of a little appetizer.
You like elk sausage?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a bunch of
Jeez.
elk summer sausage right now that I've been.
I think you're going to get some phone calls for that one right there.
Yeah. Come eat some sausage on the mow.
Making sausage on the mow. That's the title of the podcast.
There you
we
go.
No, that's good. Wow. Okay. Main course?
An interesting sandwich. I try to I'm a big muffaletta guy, so I got this like muffaletta mix that's been really
Muffa
good.
who?
It's like it's like an olive tapenade that I've been putting on. As a guide, I get real sandwich tired by like this time of the year. So
as a human, I get really sandwich tired.
Oh God, I try to mix it up, So
yeah,
sandwiches, some interesting drinks like Fresca. I've been a big Fresca guy lately.
Fresca.
It's a good river soda,
No caffeine. Keep your clients calm.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Favorite place, or what would you recommend to a client who's been fishing with you all day? Some place to get a bite to eat, something to drink.
If he's been fishing with me all day, he needs a stiff drink. But no, and Craig's like, it's, as you said, pretty small. So we don't have a ton of options. It's not like Ennis on the Madison where it's like sort of a mini resort town, which has its pluses and minuses. But we've got a great newer spot in Craig called the Tap House. And it's an extension of a brewery in Helena here, 10-mile brewery. And that's my favorite spot. It's kind of family friendly, little outdoor patio area. They've got great beers, also really good burgers and pizzas. That's kind of like the catch-all. Joe's is a great, just like classic river bar, dive bar, good place to hear some tall tales, maybe get in a fight with a guide or a salty local. But no, it's a good spot to get a shot and a beer.
Can be rough.
Yeah.
Noted. Okay. All right. Micah, thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Steve. This was a blast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you did a great job.
Awesome.
How can people get in touch with you?
So I'm a guide, in Montana, which means I have to guide legally for outfitters. I guide for a couple prominent outfitters in the area. Montana Fishing Outfitters is one.
Okay.
And Mountain Prairie Outfitters is the other. You can Google them. You can also Google my name, and I think my contact info is out there somewhere. And I'll God willing, be an outfitter here soon. So I'll have my own shingle out as well. But yeah,
super cool. Good for you. And you got Instagram, Facebook pages?
I do. It's Micah B Fields. My Instagram, MICABFIELDS.
Okay. Same for Facebook.
Yep.
All right, cool. Mike, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And folks, thank you for listening to another episode of The Destination Angler. We'll be sure to post Micah's contact info on our website. And he sent me some pictures, some really incredible fish that he's pulling out of this river, man. So go out to Facebook and Instagram and check that out. You can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shaig@destinationanglerpodcast.com. Hey, if you like the show, please mention it to your buddy. Tell your buddy about The Destination Angler. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.